There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. How do you like my new frock, my new blouse, my new shirt? I bought it because of you. I have a husband who doesn't care what he wears or what I wear. I have to force him to notice that I bought 2 new shirts last night. I said, look in the bag, come on, because otherwise he would never. And I'm a little bit more fashion conscious than him, but only a smidge. And don't have a social life. But I want to look good for you people, so I think I should start a Patreon account for my wardrobe. Anyway, I love this flower. It's Flower Friday, people. I've had a good week, but there's so many things that are in progress or have finished, but especially things that will start for June 1st, tomorrow, that I am not organized. So it's going to be a bit of a Dog's Breakfast of a Friday Reads. There's the title, A Dog's Breakfast of a Friday Reads. Okay, let's move on. Before I start, I wanted to tell you that thanks to Cousin of Always Doing, I came up with a great lesson for my students here in Japan, here in Tokyo. Most of my classes, it's a kind of a how was your weekend conversation, 3 weeks out of every month, where they either in pairs or telling me whole group or a combination thereof, talk about what they did the previous weekend. I make notes on the mistakes I hear, and then I write those mistakes up on the board. Then I go to the back and read my novel for 10 or 15 minutes while they converse in Japanese trying to correct the mistakes. And then I come back up to the front and we correct them together. That's 3 weeks out of the month for most of my classes. And then the final week is called Teacher's Choice, where I design some kind of fun or very different style of lesson. It could be a conversational board game or something that's quite different from the usual fare. So this month, thanks to Cousin, I did a lesson based on this Japanese manga. The English translation is What Did You Eat Yesterday? And that is quite a fairly direct translation of the Japanese title, Kino Nani Tabata. And Cousin recommended this on her channel in a wrap-up or something late last year, and I bought it. And then when we were preparing to meet, she mentioned that she had read it in the original Japanese. So to start the lesson, I gave them photocopies of the first pages in English. And by the way, this manga is about 2 gay guys that are foodies. So it's a very foodie manga. Gave them the first 2 pages, and then they asked any questions of the things they couldn't understand. And then the next 2 pages I gave them with the dialogue blanked out, and that took a crap of a long time to do, but that's the joy of being a teacher. And they looked at me wondering what they were supposed to do. Were they supposed to create the next part of the story out of their brains? I said, no, here is the next 2 pages in Nihongo, in Japanese, so please translate it into English. Well, almost to a person, my 60 or so students that got this lesson this past week, loved it, and they had such a good time doing it. So that was great, and that was thanks to Cousin, because she had the Japanese and she recommended the English one to me. It's been turned into a TV show, not an anime, but an actual, with real actors, TV show in Japan, and apparently it's very popular. So that happened. Thanks, Cousin. All right, so let's get started. I know I have at least 1 bale, maybe more. Let's see. Oh, just 1 bale. And that was one of the Faber stories. Alan Bennett's The Shielding of Mrs. Forbes. Started out quite amusing, but I thought it was going to be kind of a lightweight piece of fluff. Well, it then descended into really writing about heterosexual sex, and maybe the takeaway here is that an 85-year-old gay playwright shouldn't try to write about heterosexual sex. It was some of the worst, just most puke-worthy sex writing I have read in my life. So I got halfway and I was done, like dinner. Doris says in my video will be going up. I hope she made out better than I did, but I thought it stunk big time, and I don't think I could read anything When I read such bad writing by a writer, the last time this happened was with Michael Ondaatje. I can't stop myself, my egotistical self, from thinking that I have to punish this writer by never reading another word they write ever again. So he's on that list. I have started a bunch. I have one that I started and finished, so I'll talk about that one in the next batch here. But in terms of books that are still in progress that I started in the previous 7 days, one was a spontaneous decision to start a mammoth audiobook. I was complaining. I complained recently about audiobooks. I have trouble with narrators, and then I latch on to a narrator, and then I can't move them in my audiobook brain to a new novel because I hear their voice only connected to it. Drags me, pulls me back into that other wonderful novel, and I can't take them. It's kind of like having an open relationship. No, there. So, but I was thinking about it some more and realizing, I don't have that problem so much with classics. And the classics tend to be wonderfully narrated. The Trollope narrator that I've discovered is wonderful. Juliet Stevenson is just amazing. Now, I might have the problem with Juliet Stevenson. She does the Virginia Woolf novel so incredibly. And I did try to follow her into another more modern novel, and it didn't work. But I think that was a pretty shitty novel. That was the Mermaid and Mrs. Hancock or something. But anyway, just controversies left, right, and center this morning. But on a whim, I previewed the opening few minutes of the 1749, or is it 1748, novel by Samuel Richardson, Clarissa. And I loved the narration. And Volume 1, I don't know how many volumes, I hope it's only 2, but I know it's a huge novel. Volume 1 of the audiobook is 34 hours. Volume 1! So I've started it and I'm really enjoying it. Sometimes I follow along on the Gutenberg free ebook, but most of the time I'm just out walking or on the train listening to it, and it's really, I've listened to maybe an hour, and that's like 3% of the way in, but it's really, really good. Interesting. I say a lot of silly things. I admit it. Everybody says silly things, but at least I admit it. One silly thing I have said in the last 6 months or so was that I'm not interested in reading fiction pre-1800. But I think I did say maybe about 50 years before that, so I'm still within the window. I enjoy studying older literature, Shakespeare or whatever, blah, 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 but not reading for enjoyment. Well, this one, so far, I'm really enjoying. So that's in progress. You won't be hearing me wrap that one up until 2020, I'm sure. I have also started Ariana Harwich's newest translation into English, Feeble-Minded, translated by Annie McDermott and Carolina Orloff. And it took me a day. It wasn't until day 2 that I could get into it. I loved Die My Love, and I didn't think I would love it, and I absolutely loved Die My Love. And then this one, it started out, it's much less of a story than Die My Love. And what story there is it's really grotesque kind of story of a very dysfunctional relationship between a mother and a daughter. And most of it is happening in the narrator's brain, which was the same in Die My Love, but there isn't so much of a story across chapters. I'm getting there now, but I couldn't get hold of the plot to the degree there is one until day 2, and now I'm absolutely loving it again. The writing is just gorgeous. I would read anything either of these two translate, I think, just based on how wonderful this reads. So I had hoped to finish it up. I had hoped to finish up a bunch of books yesterday to be able to tell you about them today, and then today is the last day of the month, and I'm starting fresh with a bunch of new stuff, and I'm just not going to push myself. My Asian readathon reading and a lot of stuff's going to flow into June, and that's just the way it is. I'm not going to kill myself to finish stuff, but I'm reading a whole bunch of good stuff, and I'm just going to keep on enjoying it, and this is definitely one of them. And the last book that I've started, this is a Blame It on Joe, but this is me projecting my own inability to control my reading life onto Joe. That should be the hashtag. Joe Smith, the wonderful commenter and follower of all of our channels. Because she mentioned in a comment to my review of Ian Lee's memoiristic essays, Dear Friend, that she had just started a book of her short stories. And then I replied to that comment and said, oh, maybe I'll join you. And then 10 seconds after I sent it, I thought, oh, Sean, what are you doing? You've got so many other books on the go. But it's rare for me to have a writer seize hold of me the way Ian Lee has seized hold of me. And I just felt compelled to immediately go into another book by her. And I never do that. But so then Jo sent me a Voxer message and she said, Sean, I thought you were trying to cut down on your buddy reads, but please join me if you want. So I did buy the ebook. It was so cheap. Oh, I should mention the title, Gold Boy, Emerald Girl. And I'm only about 15% in and about halfway through the first story. But the first story is so far is absolutely incredible. I see the comparison to Alice Munro to a certain degree, but it's just really gripped me. And I can, now that I've read the memoiristic essays, I can see how heavily autobiographical parts of it are. But really enjoying it. I'm going to read it slowly because, I've got other things to read. But I'm so glad that Jo has enabled me to go directly from the memoir to the fiction, and I'm really enjoying it so far. Oh, I just see Trump's imposing tariffs on Mexico. Let's change the conversation from how much of a traitor to your own country you are. I have finished 3 books. I finished the Barbara Pym novel, A Few Green Leaves, and I loved it. I gave it 4 stars because it had some weaknesses that I couldn't overlook, but they didn't really get in the way of me loving it just because it was just such a nostalgic read. I mean, it was just so many echoes of Barbara Pym at the height of her powers, but she wasn't at the height of her powers. She was at the end of her life when she at least finished the revisions on this one, and I think she got too much advice from reading her biography about how to do it, and certain things didn't work, but what worked was just like comforting. I never use the word cozy, it just doesn't roll off my tongue, but it was a cozy read, and it wasn't like Mae West in Sextet when she was 85 years old and making a movie with her at the center as the sex symbol. It wasn't that much where Barbara Pym wasn't that much past her prime, no. But, I wouldn't suggest to anyone that they start with this one. I've had several commenters asked me where to start with Barbara Pym, and this is what I always say. My 3 favorites are her debut, Some Tame Gazelle, A Glass of Blessings, and No Fond Return of Love. I didn't love Excellent Women the way that I loved those 3, but Excellent Women is the one that most people know. I liked it. I gave it 5 stars. I loved it, but not the way those 3. So those are where I suggest you start. But and then a lot of readers, certainly I did, were really challenged by Quartet in Autumn. I did end up loving it, and then Ange and I were both really disappointed by how much of a departure the last one after that was. The Sweet Dove Died. Yeah, it was. I just thought it was just so devoid of what I love in a Barbara Pym novel. There was almost no humor and just really unlikable characters, and nobody to root for, nothing to smile about. Just slit my wrists. Depressing. Not sad, though, just depressing, like what awful people. So anyway, and then to come to this one, which harkened back to the kind of mischievous, humorous, deeply lonely protagonists that you just can't help love and you try not to laugh at, but laugh with. That's what this was like, but it wasn't as good as my 3 favorites. And I finished this Indian novel, That Long Silence by Shashi Deshpande. There was much, what do so many reviewers use this phrase, much to admire. I didn't bail, but I didn't like it. It was 3 stars. It held my interest, so that's saying something. But it was about a woman with a marriage that was in deep trouble because in India, because the husband had been accused of some kind of embezzlement or something at work, and so there's scandal, and they leave Bombay and go to another smaller city and kind of wait it out and see what's going to happen. And it's a first-person narrative, and the first-person narrator is really talkative. She's really gives you every little in and out. And it was interesting. I loved the extended family and hearing all the details of that. But it didn't really work. It read... And it was kind of a feminist tale. I mean, she wanted to be kind of... It was about her being independent of her husband and her struggles through the fairly long marriage, and separate from her mother, who was very controlling, and there was all these things, but it just read like the kind of story. It was set in India, but otherwise it was the kind of story that we've all read versions of. There was nothing much new here. I might try another one by her. If I did, I'd do some research to see where this fit in her oeuvre, and if she'd written some later stuff. I have another one of hers on the shelf. I might try it because it held my interest. That's the most positive I can be about it. And I started and finished as a buddy read with two of my dear friends from Litzy, Leah and Cindy. My first time ever buddy reading with Cindy. And the name of the novel is McGlue by Otessa Moshveg. I am very surprised and pleased to tell you that I think I loved it. I really, really liked it. And I may go back and give it 5 stars because to see how much it sticks with me. It is based on a newspaper article from New York State, 1850 or something. And it's about a sailor. He falls out of a ship and lands on his head. So he's got a head injury that will barely ever stop bleeding throughout the novel. And he gets picked up and taken under the wing by a slightly older man, a rich guy, and they chum together. And it's just the story of what happens. I'm not going to say any more. It was a little bit too wispy for me, the story, but there was a real story to it, and I loved the protagonist, the kid. I don't remember his name. McGlue. His name was McGlue. And he was a sad sack, but he was also a fully drawn character, and I loved him and the other guy whose name I've already forgotten, the two men at the center of the story. She's an excellent writer. Now, she says... I'll paste in the podcast interview again but in the show notes, but she says that she never wrote another book like that, and she kind of wishes that she had, but she thinks now that she went on to Eileen and the later ones that she could never go back and write another novel like that. I've heard such mixed reviews of anything else she's written, and I think I probably would hate them, but I thought I was going to hate this too. So I will try Eileen someday, but this was really good, and it's a novella. You can read it in... People say you can read it in one sitting, but I don't get that at all, and I think I was dragging my buddy readers down because we did it over 4 days, and that was like about 25 pages a day. But that really, I don't usually like to read more than about 20 pages out of any book in one day, unless I have some deadline to meet. I'm very much of a, read 10 pages, put it down, pick up the next novel 10 pages, and then cycle through. That doesn't work for everybody, so I don't know if my buddy readers will ever buddy read with me again, but... It is a book you could read in one sitting if you're weird like that. But yeah, I was really quite impressed by it. So those are what I've finished. So now comes the complicated part, because June 1st is tomorrow, and I have buddy reads and Queer Lit Readathon and BookTube Prize judging. So I don't have to keep it a secret what I'm reading, but I won't wrap any of these books up until after the semifinals round has finished at the end of July. I will be starting Tommy Orange's There this week. And I will also be starting, and I'm so excited this was in my group, Aminata Forna's Happiness, which I'm looking forward to both of them. So that's all I'll say about that. You won't hear me, other than I will mention that I finished it. You won't hear anything about this anywhere on social media until the very end of July. So that's for BookTube Prize judging. I don't know if you remember Cecilia, but Cecilia is a Litzy friend, and she's from Singapore, and we made a tipsy book. I don't think she was tipsy, but I certainly was. Tipsy book chat last summer. I can't remember. Last year sometime. And she's coming back to Tokyo, so we're meeting next Friday. And those of you that might remember from that video, she has made a, what do you call it? Meetup book club for NYRB books, and so she's been reading at least a book a month, if not more, probably more than that. So recently she read this one, and I'm going to read it so we can talk about it. Olivia Manning's School for Love. Pretty short, yeah, under 200 pages. I've never read Olivia Manning, don't know a thing about her. I see she died in 1980. Born in England, spent much of her childhood in Northern Ireland, and I think she's most famous for a couple trilogies. The Balkan trilogy I've heard of, and the Levant trilogy, which I have not heard of. Oh, and that entire series is known collectively as Fortunes of War, so I may move on to that at some point, but dip my toe in the water with School for Love. This was going to be a buddy read, but it's not going to be a buddy read. It's going to be a lazy person's discussion vlog between Natalie and I, Natalie of My Reading Days. I suggested that we do a lazy format because she and I have both been doing a lot of video collaborations with Doris, actually, of Aldi Books, and where you knit all the videos together to have a discussion back and forth, and I love it, but it's fiddly, takes a lot of work and a lot of importing and exporting and downloading and uploading, and I suggested, why don't we do the lazy version of that? And it's about this book, Necropolis by Jeet Thayil, and it is set in the squalor of Bombay in the 1970s, pimps, pushers, poets, and gangsters. And I love the opening paragraph of this, just stunning. I've heard really good things about it. And so the lazy version means that next week I will post my impressions of the first half of the novel on my channel. Natalie will watch my video and then respond to it, including her impressions to the first half. But it's not going to be one video that's on both of our channels. My on my channel, hers on hers. And then for the second half, after we finish the novel, Natalie will wrap up first, and I will watch her video and then respond to her and wrap up the second half myself. So it'll be really excited to finally get to this. So those are what I've got for books that I have, but there's more. So let me... On Monday, I think it's Monday, June 4th, maybe Tuesday, but anyway, early next week, I'm starting a 10-day buddy read with Heidi of My Reading Life of May Sarton's novel, The Magnificent Spinster. I have never read any May Sarton. I've been wanting to forever. God, it's getting really cloudy. I hope it doesn't rain. I didn't bring an umbrella and I got all these books. But anyway, I've been wanting to for decades, and we're going to buddy read it. And that will actually count towards the Queer Lit Readathon. And Joe, I think it was Joe. Yeah, Joe said in a comment that this has a transgendered main character. So that will also count, and I didn't know that because I didn't know enough about the book. I may start something else from the Queer Lit Readathon, and if I do, that would probably be the Keith Hale novel, most popularly known by its title, Cody, but I like the first title that was given, Clicking Beat on the Brink of Nada. I think I will start that one next week too, possibly. So that's what's going on. Holy smokes. And I started a tradition, but I only did it twice and forgot last week. So let's see, the new tradition that I started, let's see if it becomes a tradition, is to look at newly posted videos in my subscription feed and then just shout them out, usually not having watched them yet. So let's see what's up there. Lots of BookTube Prize quarterfinals wrap-ups, and I have decided I'm not going to watch them unless they're about books that I'm not judging, just so that I can save myself from my own reading. Sharon of Hooked on Books has an Owls Readathon result. I love Sharon's videos so much. If you don't watch her channel, you must check it. I want to send lots of new subscribers her way so that she might make more videos, because her videos are fabulous. Greg of Supposedly Fun has a new video, The Types of Books I Read Most. Steve Donahue has 17,000 new videos to watching some of those. Jacqueline of 6 Minutes for Me has some non-fiction recommendations for Reading Women Month. And I dropped the ball on joining in on Reading Women Month, but because I'm doing the Queer Lit Readathon and the Read the Middle East Readathon, my TBR for that will go up in the next few days. Every month is Reading Women Month for me, but I certainly support it. Kendra's podcast, Reading Women, is celebrating its 3-year birthday. Mel of Mel's Bookland Adventure did my 2 books with 1 stone tag. It's wonderful. I have watched it, and I'm now tagging all of you to do it too. Sabrina of Unmanaged Mischief often does, or fairly regularly does, the try a chapter tag, and it was me watching her do it that got me interested to try it myself, and she has a new one, part 3 of the summer TBR edition of the try a chapter tag. Brian of Bookish did the Book Snob book tag, and somebody tagged me. Alan Morton, I think, tagged me. No, Alan Morton just told me about it. I don't know. Steve Donahue tagged me. I don't think I'm going to do it because I'll just piss people off by revealing what a book snob I am. So everybody knows I'm a book snob. There would be no new information, but just perhaps some new alienation. So maybe I'll do a tipsy version and let the chips fall where they may. Cousin of Always Doing has most anticipated reads for June 2019. Haven't watched that yet. And Anja Beyond the Pages has been a little indisposed of late, but she's back with a book haul video. All right. I've had a great week, and I hope you have too, and I expect a full report down there. Oh, in the comments section, just in case there's any confusion about what I'm pointing at. Thanks for watching.